All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We have an exciting conversation today on the podcast. We just hosted a 168-hour global virtual burn, 168 hours of nonstop worship all over the world virtually. And so I've got some of our team with the Burn 24/7 that we work together to do this, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about what God did. We're going to talk about worship online right now, worship and prayer happening virtually in light of everything that's going on with the coronavirus. We're going to talk about the cool things God's doing with it, maybe some of the challenges of it, as well as some of the technical, nerdy stuff, gear and technology and all that stuff. So if you enjoy that, you're going to want to make sure you tune in and stay till the end. But before I dive in today with the conversation, just want to thank you for tuning in. The Presence Pioneers podcast exists to help you and your community experience and host the presence of God. We believe God's presence changes everything. And so if this is your first time tuning in, please subscribe. Obviously, you can subscribe in your podcast app. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you can hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get a notification. You can also go to our website, presencepioneers.org. You can subscribe via email, which is actually my personal favorite. You'll get an email as soon as an episode comes out. You'll be the first to know, and we will keep you updated that way. We've got all of our previous episodes, all the show notes and everything up on our website as well. And if this is helpful to you or encouraging or interesting, please share it. I know many of you are part of worshiping, praying communities. So please share this with your community, share it on social media. If you're on Apple, if you can give us a rating or a review, any of that kind of stuff helps, gets the word out, and spreads day and night worship and prayer, which is what we want. So thanks so much for tuning in. We're going to jump into a conversation today. I've got three guests, three friends with me today who are leaders within the Burn 24/7 movement. This is our first podcast where we have more than two people. So this will be fun today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and who they are and their role within the Burn movement. So thank you guys so much for joining us today and being on the podcast. Joe, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. And yeah, my name is Joe Synanon, and my wife and I are the national directors for the Burn in Canada. And we've been doing the Burn in Canada for 11 years, not 11 years, 9 years. But yeah, it's been a privilege to be part of this movement and be part of the move of God across the earth. So
Amazing. Awesome. Liam,
Hey, what's
welcome.
going on? Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here chatting with y'all. My name is Liam. I'm from Burn in the mid-south of the United States of America. So I oversee Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, where I am. I'm in Oklahoma City. And so, yeah, super glad to be here. And yeah, looking forward to the conversation. I've been here for, oh, geez. We've been burning for about 6 years. The whole burn in Oklahoma City has been going for a decade. I've been burning for the past 6 years, and then I took over 2 years ago as the director here. So, yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Dan Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Yeah, so I'm Dan from the UK, in Durham, and it's a cathedral city. I think we've been burning for over 10 years now. I think we're the longest running burn in the UK. But I've been helping to direct in Durham for about 3 years alongside William Bing, and it's so much fun. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for jumping on. Look, let's just give a recap because we just did this 168 hours of nonstop worship. So somebody jump in, maybe Joe, what just happened?
yeah, you know what? A full week of continuous worship, day and night worship. And like you said, Matt, 168 hours. I think we had, what was it, 14 countries and over five
Yeah.
continents. I think 130 separate worship teams and leaders that jumped on and took sets. And so, yeah, literally worship that rose from different parts of the world and covered the earth. It was exciting.
It's amazing. Amazing. So 14 nations jumped in. So the cool thing about Burn 24/7, for anyone who's not familiar with the movement, is we have a couple hundred locations all over the world where we have communities that are gathering regularly to worship and pray for hours and hours, 12, 24 plus hours of nonstop worship and prayer. And so we are pulling in people from these communities all over the world, India and Germany and Bahrain and Colombia, Canada, of course, UK, all over Europe. So it's amazing. 168 hours. So we live streamed on Facebook and on YouTube. Tens of thousands of people engaged with what we were doing. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it show up in their feed, in Facebook, which is incredible. A lot more than we normally have at our burn gatherings when we're in person. So Liam, Dan, one of you guys, what are your reflections on this 168 hours?
Yeah, I thought it was a very special time. I think, especially when you do these live type situations, and I think a lot of our furnaces do them individually as their own kind of community. But to do something where it reaches beyond the borders of one community into the other and kind of blurs the lines, and it's kind of like this united Burn 24/7 front thing. Like that's a really special thing, and I'm fairly certain that this is the first time anything like this has ever happened, at least in our history as a movement. And so that's really cool. Like we set up precedents and we set history. Like we've been a part of history this past week. So cool.
Yeah, definitely
Amazing.
been exciting to be something that's so pioneering. And yeah, like you said, Liam, I don't think it's ever been done before. I mean, yeah, there's 24/7 prayer and worship in different places, but gathering teams from all different parts of the world on a continuous stream, it's never been done.
I've never heard of anything like it either. It kind of made me wonder, why have we never done this before? Actually, why did it take a
Yeah.
crisis to do that?
I think the only thing I can liken it to that I've seen before would be the Olympic Games. So I don't know if you've ever watched the Olympics, where you get the ceremony of all the nations coming in and kind of presenting themselves before they go and compete against each other. Obviously, we're not competing, but there's that kind of unified thing. And yeah, it's just so awesome. I can imagine God's kind of like joy over that. Incredible.
For sure. I felt that for sure. I mean, when I was helping oversee, portions of the live stream, I remember there was one morning, it was Germany, India, and Bahrain, right back to back 3 hours. And I literally had moments of where I was weeping, just feeling God's joy over the worship of the nations. I mean, every tribe, tongue, and nation is what you see in Revelation, worshiping before the throne of God. And like, to see an expression of that, even on the internet, to me, I just felt God's pleasure. It's like, a little taste of heaven, you know, online. Made me anticipate, the age to come when we would really get to all be together as well. But uh, anything else, guys? What were some of did you guys have any encouragement? Did you hear any feedback? Any testimonies of what happened during that 168 hours?
Yeah, tons of feedback from people in my circles in Canada who tuned in and watched, and were just blessed to have live worship in their homes that they can turn on and stream anytime during the whole week. So anytime of the day, they can just uh, tune in and find worship. And that was a huge, huge blessing. Um, and just lots of feedback of just feeling God's presence in their home through the worship, and seeing all the nations, even worshiping in different languages, was a blessing. And Canada is a nation made up of many, many nations. A lot of people moved to Canada, and so some of those languages that people were worshiping in were native tongues to those who were watching. So it was a blessing to them for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. For me, it's kind of funny. I can be kind of loud on social media. If you know me or follow me, I tend to spend a lot of time on social media. But it seemed like a lot of my people had no idea what was going on, which was really funny. But then I started to have conversations with people kind of midweek. So the first few days, people weren't even around. And then midweek, I was like, hey, we're halfway through 168 hours of worship and prayer across the earth. And people are going, wait, you're doing what? Like their minds were blown. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to tune into that. And so it was pretty funny. The first few days, it was kind of light here in Oklahoma City in the Mid-South. But then I think it picked up towards the end and kind of snowballed into the finale. So
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people haven't been able to kind of do stuff, get out of their houses, or kind of, it's been almost a perfect storm. And I think what's really struck me is how hungry people have been just to worship. And a lot of the burns in the UK were kind of planning events which had to kind of suddenly go virtual through live streaming. And so there's kind of like this groundswell, and suddenly people are talking to one another. So not only did it kind of create this platform for worship, but there's so much connection. Like, you know, people were kind of comparing notes, or how do we do this, or how, you know, what setup should I use? And so there's this kind of like almost friendships developing across, you know, huge kind of geographical space. And obviously this kind of conversation here is just the representative of that. But yeah, it's just incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's
right,
what I
like
was thinking as you were saying that. I was like, the team that led this 168 hours, many of us, you know, don't interact often. I mean, I didn't know you, Dan, or Will at all, really. And now I felt like, you know, our team, and also Debbie, who's over mainland Europe, she was a part of our team as well. I felt like all of us really bonded together as well, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Pratap, we had the Indians involved. That was incredible. I think that was just wonderful, just to see not just kind of like English speaking kind of worship, but this kind of diverse language coming in, which is amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. I heard at least one lady that was streaming the worship in a hospital in Charlotte, which is pretty amazing, to just, you know, allowing the presence of God into where they were helping with people. And one of the cool things that I remember is the communion too. We, you know, it was, I don't think we even shared this. It was from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday was 168 hours. And so we took communion during the time of Passover, which also landed right there in the middle of all of that, in 4 different time zones, which was cool, to be able to facilitate communion with people in their homes as well. That was kind of a highlight to me. We did it with our kids here, which was a lot of fun. So, so Liam, I wanted to ask you, man, because we were kind of ready to pull the trigger on this virtual burn idea. We actually, before we did our 168 hours, we did 48 hours in the US. I think the UK did as well, a couple weeks before that. And part of that was because you already had this idea. So yeah, I would love for you to just kind of share sort of the vision and what was already stirring in your heart, how God spoke to you on that, and anything else related you'd want to share.
yeah, absolutely. I think for the past few years since I've taken over here in Oklahoma City, I've done a lot of Facebook Live feeds. And with that, I began to notice all of the other furnaces doing these feeds. That I wasn't the only one going live, and so there's almost this like this blast of worship happening on the internet from all these different furnaces, and it was really cool for me. It was fun to. It's essentially felt like, oh, I get to tune into everybody's burn. Like I can on my own time, I can come back and hey, let's check out your burn. It's Tuesday, so I'm gonna go burn with whoever, Corsicana, Texas, or Galveston. I'm gonna go burn with some of my friends in my region. Um, and then I just prayerfully began to think about some of what we call core values in the burn, and one of those things is the John 17 unity piece, that we hope to be one as Jesus and the Father are one. And so I just prayerfully asked the Lord about that. And I, like everybody else, prophesy in part and see in part. So I didn't know COVID was coming. Like, I'm not going to be that guy to say I knew that we were going to be on lockdown for months. I had no idea. But I did sense this opportunity of, man, what if the United States, what if we could get every furnace to go live and we do a prayer set where it's 1 hour from every furnace? Or, we do like a sun up to sundown thing where the sun rises, it rises in the east and it sets in the west. And so just kind of prayerfully, some of this language that David uses in the Psalms of like, the Lord is worthy from the rising of the sun, or rising of the sun to the setting of its rays, like really, really cool language. And then thinking like, what if we put a burn in that kind of way or in that area? And so that led me just to reach out, and it really felt like the Lord. It felt divinely inspired, and then it was like, oh, you know, like this isn't a later thing. And it's funny, at the beginning of the year, I even planned, and I still have it on our Facebook page. We are planning in Oklahoma City to do a 100-hour digital burn in June. Like that was our June plan from December, January. Like as we're planning 6 months ahead into this year, we are thinking, all right, we're going to go for 100 hours digitally online. Um, and there's another lady in our local community who has since kind of similarly, what if we did some live stuff? What if we let people go from their living rooms? Like, do you think that could like really take off? And so there's been a handful of really cool conversations around that. And I think it just kind of sparked what is now feeling like the potential of 24/7. Like it really feels like we have the potential to go day and night, as long as we begin to facilitate and kind of calling people into action. I think that's where we're at prayerfully, is really actually feeling like we can do this. This 24/7 piece is feeling like I think we can do this globally.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I love the idea of a virtual 24/7 prayer room, literally burning 24/7 across the globe. And so, yeah, I think the Burn 24/7 movement is uniquely positioned to possibly do that. One of the things that was really great with the 168 hours was having people across different time zones who could help. That's fantastic, because when you're doing a gathering in one location, somebody's got to be up in the middle of the night if you're doing a burn or night watch or whatever. But we could sort of pass the baton, and nobody had to stay up all night, and that was nice. So, any other thoughts on just sort of this idea of virtual worship, sort of in general, or maybe how God's using it? Dan, Joe, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's been the goal all along for the Burn 24/7 to go literally 24/7, and there's been a lot of vision and talk from different leaders, whether it be regional leaders or national leaders, about 24/7, maybe in their region or in their nation. But yeah, this a whole online virtual worship has just opened the door for a global community and global worship, and so we need to take advantage of it for sure. And I really do feel like the Lord is saying now is the time. And even before we did the global burn, our team here, we've been talking about doing 24/7 worship virtually across Canada. But I think it is just the Holy Spirit just birthing in us what was on His heart, and so tapping into the global community of the Burn 24/7 just makes sense. And yeah, we'll definitely pursue still worship across Canada virtually, but we're all in when it comes to doing the global burn and 24/7 for sure. So yeah, we're excited.
It's awesome. I've seen a couple people post online, sort of like, what's God saying in this time? He's really trying to get people to worship in their homes. So he's getting us out of the church building. And then I'm seeing some other people who are saying, wow, he's helping us to realize how powerful it is when we do gather together, since we're not doing it and we're missing it. I kind of feel like it's both, actually, where it's like, number one, it's like, oh, wow, maybe we should have been utilizing technology in a greater way. Maybe we should have been making our homes more of an altar of worship and prayer. But then at the same time, it's like, gosh, there's something special about gathering together too, isn't there? And so I feel like it's kind of both. I'm really missing the corporate worship, being in the same room, hearing everybody's voices, feeling that manifest presence of God together. But at the same time, there's this really cool opportunity with all this virtual worship and prayer as well. And I think God's in on that as well. So, all right, what are some of the challenges of doing this kind of thing, virtual worship, whether that be theological, what is church challenges, if we want to go down that road, open that can of worms, or what are some of the technological challenges, of what we did with the 168 hours. So let's get real.
Yeah, you know what? I think um, technology has afforded us this opportunity, and we're stepping into it. At the same time, technology is the challenge. When it comes to live streaming, you have to deal with, of course, the internet connectivity and equipment, and and then also live streaming from Zoom to the website to Facebook and YouTube, and all those sort of things. Um, and so I think we definitely learned a lot. It certainly helped that the U.S. and the U.K. Did 48-hour burns before we did the 168. I think that prepared us and set a level of expectation. But at the same time, yeah, there are definitely challenges dealing with so many teams from so many continents, and yeah, it's just a lot of variation in terms of quality, and which is to be expected. And but uh, but definitely that was a challenge, I would say.
For sure. For sure. Dan, Liam, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, doing like live streaming, like we've done, kind of overcomes some of the challenges that maybe going like fully 24/7 in one location uh, would have. You know, like there's examples like IHOP and others who are doing it, and I think you had guys on your podcast talking about that in the past. But you know, suddenly we've got this technology that allows us to do what we've always dreamed of, and so there's this kind of like perfect storm. And I think, you know, technology can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And it's like, how do we do some of these things in the right way? So no, we definitely do need wisdom, especially in things like communicating and you know, I think we had a reach of, was it over 800,000 people on Facebook alone? Suddenly
Yeah.
that's a big microphone, you know. So you've got all these people coming on, and you know, how do you manage that? That's probably a real issue that we need to think about. But you know, I at the same time, I think God's been really good. Like, it's been full of grace, and you know, it's just a testament to what He's been doing through the burn. Like, there's all these amazing people, you know, this incredible network, and that fused with the technology has created this wonderful thing. And yeah, I mean, some of the kind of challenges in terms of sound quality, internet connection, like I had people messaging me like, this is my dial-up speed, is it good enough? You know, you're kind of like doing quality control in real time with people. You know, we had people's computers crash halfway through their sets. That happened with me. So you just kind of go dark for a bit, and then you're on the phone in the background trying to, is everything okay? How long is it going to be? You know. So you've got to kind of be prepared to roll with whatever comes, haven't you? That's what I found, at least. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, it was great fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Doing the 48 hours was really helpful. I feel like in some ways the quality did go up with the 168 hours, even though there were still challenges. but from the 48 to the 168. Just maybe we can get into the weeds of the technology for a few minutes for those who are interested in that kind of thing. So for what we did for the 168 hours is we used Zoom, which many of you know is becoming pretty popular lately because it's video conferencing, and it's what we're using right now to record this podcast. It's primarily used for people to talk to each other. But the beautiful thing about Zoom is you can use it easily from Zoom to live stream. And so when you have a bunch of people logging in from all over different places, it's a very helpful tool. And really, we couldn't find a better tool to allow people to just simply log in and to do their worship set, and then to have it automatically go out live stream to other people, because without basically setting up a TV studio and having people sort of be like remote locations for a legit TV studio. So that's what we use. We use Zoom, and then I went to a custom streaming service called Caster that split it out to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So that's kind of how we did that. And then we just gave the Zoom login to the worship leaders. They got in. So the only people in Zoom were the worship leaders, and then the host, which was our team that we had set up to be in there. And we were maybe we could talk about this, because the transitions, I think, between the worship sets were challenged because of the challenge with communication. If you talk, everybody that's watching, thousands of people can potentially hear what you're saying if you say, "Are you ready?" That kind of thing. So that was kind of a fun dynamic. We used the little chat feature on Zoom a little bit to talk back and forth with people. But do you guys have any funny experiences with any of that?
After a while, you try to be as smooth as possible and transition without all the chatter. But after a while, it's like, it's let's just be real and and just
Right.
have the conversation over with potentially hundreds, maybe thousands of people watching, and
Right.
and simply communicate with the worship leaders as they came and went. But yeah, hosting was somewhat of a challenge, especially if we were recruiting people who didn't know how to use Zoom. And I think at one point, one of our hosts, uh, before transferring the host duties to somebody else, ended the meeting and completely cut the feed. And so that killed the set for, I think, at least 30 minutes. And as we got it up and running again. But yeah, just little things like that that you wouldn't anticipate. But yeah, it was funny for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of gear and technology wise that people were using, we had a wide range. I mean, we had sets that were professionally done. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you had sets that were basically just using the computer and the microphone on the computer and the camera on the computer and just picking up ambient sound. And so definitely a wide range of sound quality, as well as even camera quality because of internet connectivity and whatnot. So some of the sets were choppy. Other sets were like, wow, this is incredible. I don't know how they did it, but it's like professional. And so it was interesting to see the wide spectrum of sets that happened.
There was somebody from the UK, Dan, that looked like they were in a TV studio. They had multiple camera angles going.
Oh yeah.
And all,
So I think that couple actually does TBN.
yeah.
So they had all the equipment. They seemed to know what they were doing. But yeah, we did a pre-check with them, and yeah, they seem to be really on it. I think definitely something to learn from them and how we do it. But and what really struck me about them as well is that they were really kind of engaging people as well. So I think one of the things that struck me as we were kind of doing the 168 hours is, how do you lead worship? Like, obviously there's like vertical worship, but how do you engage people? How do you encourage people to get involved? And so I think we're probably still learning how we do that, in all honesty. But yeah, kind of new challenges to kind of
And a lot of it comes
navigate.
down to, as well, to the ability of the individuals leading worship.
Right.
And how well are they trained, and how much experience do they have? And we saw a bit of that as well. Obviously, these people are all involved with the burn, but there's varying levels of ability for sure, and we saw that. So yeah, expected, I guess, when you're dealing with 130 different leaders.
For sure.
Yeah, on a very practical note, so it was 168 hours. We broke it down into 24-hour meetings. That's what Matthew did. He did a continuous 24-hour
On Zoom.
on Zoom, set up
Right.
the meeting calls, and then from there we broke that 24 hours into 6-hour slots. And so that's how the hosting was set up. It was set up in those kind of 6-hour slots, and I owe everybody the most credit for whenever I was hosting. It felt like every time I hopped on, I was like, I can't get it to go live to Facebook. And so in the background behind that, so we had the chat in Zoom going on. We as a team, we also got on WhatsApp. And so we have this WhatsApp message log going on. But what's really funny about that WhatsApp log is you see the stuff from the guys in the UK, and it's like 4 a.m. for us, and we're like, oh no, what's going on? Like my phone's blowing up, and then we're like, the guys in India are leading, and so it's like this. I thought it was like a fun part of the challenge. But shout out to Joe. I feel like Joe just came to the rescue for me on multiple occasions. He'd hop on and be like, hey, make me host real quick. Let me see if I can do it. I'd be like, all right, let's try it out. I can't figure it out, so might as well let you try because I can't get it. So there's a lot of that, which I don't think it came across. I don't think a lot of people know necessarily that stuff was going on. But that's just kind of the fun of this side of it, of facilitating 168 hours straight.
I'm remembering a moment. There was a guy from the UK who was leading worship, and he had an electric guitar, and he had it wired up to something that was, like an effects thing or amp modeler or something directly into Zoom. He had drum loops. He had all this kind of stuff going, and somehow that connection didn't get into Zoom. And so it was just using his microphone off his computer. And so all you heard was mostly his voice and the sound of the electric guitar, just the strings without, no amp or anything. And I was like, oh man. So thankfully, somebody jumped on Zoom that had helped with the hosting. And I was like, do you know this guy? They were like, yes, he lives right down the road. And they called his son, I think it was, who lived with them, and that was at the house, called him, and then he went into the room and interrupted the worship set. It was like, hey, the audio is not working. And they were able to get it tweaked and get it set back up, because there was all kinds of sounds happening that you could not hear. And you could tell he was going for it, but no one could hear what was going on. That was a fun moment.
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious. Yeah, I had to bring him up after that. I was like, are you okay? Yeah, it was quite funny. He was fine with it though. So
yeah.
It just goes to show the challenges that the leaders would have on their end. We're talking about Zoom and all the connectivity on our end, but that doesn't address all the challenges that all the leaders have on their end on getting things up and running and making sure that sound is being fed into Zoom properly, and making the adjustments to the sound audio settings and whatever else. And so there's a lot of things that have needed to come together in order for it to actually work. And for the most part, I think it worked quite well. Definitely, like you described, Matt, there's a few sets that were challenging that way. But I would say maybe 80% of the sets, people got Zoom to work in the way that we instructed and expected it to. And the sound quality, even though it varied, for the most part was good for, I would say, 80% of the sets.
And I'll just say, for those who tune in, there's a setting on Zoom called original sound that we found out. If the worship leader uses Zoom on a Windows or a Mac, they can enable original sound, which basically takes off all the Zoom filters that tries to that's basically designed for speech, and it allows the original sound that they're sending to Zoom to come through, which is vital for music. So I recorded a little tutorial on how to turn that on, and I'll include that in the show notes with this episode. It's gotten like 1,200 views on YouTube or something, because apparently a lot of people are trying to stream music on Zoom right now, which is kind of fun. So that was really important, and that made a huge difference on the Zoom side of things. But Joe and Liam, I know you guys both kind of you guys led worship sets, and you had some pretty good setups on your end in terms of how you set up your music to feed in for your online. You guys want to share kind of what your setup was like for your live streaming, try to get the best sound on your end from your homes?
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting. About a week before the Global Board, maybe a week and a half, I just really felt impressed to look for sound equipment and didn't know why. Um, and and so I went on Kijiji. I don't know if you guys have Kijiji where you are, but it's like a online listing sales thing. But anyhow, found some equipment, got it at about 25% of what the value of it was. So I got a soundboard, some speakers, and some little bit of recording equipment. And then I bought a device called an iRig Stream. And so a lot of people who do live streaming of music may be familiar with iRig, but their latest product is called iRig Stream. And with this little tiny box, I should have brought it with me, but just about that size, you could plug into the RCA output of your soundboard and plug it directly into an iPhone, your computer with a USB, and or even a Lightning iPhone connection. So you can get the full sound of your soundboard and feed that through whatever platform you're live streaming to. It's got a little gain on the iStream rig, so you can manage the sound. It doesn't clip, it doesn't distort. But you can have virtually a whole band. And one of the sets that I did actually on a Friday night was a 2-hour set of that 168 burn. And we had a full band. We did it at our church, and plugged the iRig Stream in to the soundboard, digital soundboard, and straight into the computer through Zoom, and it worked perfectly. And so that device is a lifesaver if you're streaming, especially with a band or with a soundboard. And it's very, very simple to set up, very easy to use, and it captures the quality of the sound and puts it through in a format that it can be streamed very easily. So that is the iRig Stream.
iRig Stream. Yeah, we can link to some of this stuff too when we do the episode, so people can find it online as well.
This is my Focusrite 2i2 Scarlett 2i2. It's a audio interface, and so it connects via USB to my computer. I think they run the Solo. I think runs for like 120, 150 bucks. Anyways, it has a couple of channels on it. It doesn't do any EQ or anything. It's just kind of your gain stations. And so what I did is I plugged in a diaphragm microphone, and I just kind of set it really nicely between how loud my voice is and my guitar. And I just recorded the room. So I just turned the room sound on using that, and just got close to the microphone and played around with that. And so that, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with this setup. So it's not necessarily a one-off, you're going to get it right every time. but it is something that you can play around with. And then if you do want to go further with EQs and stuff, there's all sorts of, you can look for, there's a free digital audio workspace or a DAW called Reaper that works really well, that you can set up some EQs and use your interface going through those EQs if you want to play with that. But that's all like sound tech, fun stuff / nerd stuff.
What microphone did you use, Liam?
Oh, it's like their, I don't even know. Yeah, it's their Scarlett Studio diaphragm. So it's like their like brand.
Okay, so
It's
condenser
just,
microphone.
yeah, just a condenser.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I think it sounded pretty good, all
It
things
did,
considered. It was
yeah.
literally just plug and play for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, you had some good sounding sets for sure.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
Dan, I know
definitely.
you. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, yeah, definitely. If you want a decent sound in live streaming, you have to invest a little bit of money. And a lot of the sets that we saw happen during the 168 hours, it was just the computer mic, and which was fine, but it wasn't the highest quality. So if you want to do a higher quality stream, you definitely have to invest a few $100s in getting some equipment.
For sure. Yeah, and thankfully a lot of worship leaders, especially that have some experience, a lot of them have some home recording gear or something like that that they can utilize for that purpose. But Dan, I know that you did a webinar on live streaming
Yeah.
for some people in the UK. So do you have any tips, tricks, thoughts on some of this stuff?
Yeah, so we did a webinar on the back of our 48-hour burn, mainly because I was inundated with questions on how we do this like live streaming worship thing. And so most of the questions were around sound quality, and the other question, the big question, was like the legality around streaming music. So we pulled together a webinar, which if you want to watch it, you can. We'll put the resources out. We've also put together a guide. So some of the things that we've talked about in this episode, such as how do you get your sound right in Zoom, that kind of stuff. It's all in there with equipment recommendations. So there's like shopping lists that you can go to Amazon on. I would probably just say on the equipment front, just be aware everyone's trying to live stream at the moment. So like things have doubled in price, and you might have to do some hunting around. But yeah, so I think in terms of like live streaming and the legality around that, obviously like CCL, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to really kind of dive into that too much. But we've also got someone who lives around the corner from me who's written an incredible article on it. And just kind of what you need to do, things you just need to be aware of to do it kind of responsibly and honoring those who've written amazing worship songs. Yeah. I would just mention as well, like in terms of tech, so I imagine some people listening to this won't necessarily be musicians, but are probably more responsible for like scheduling and things like that. So a tool, a little web app that we used was calendly.com, and that'll allow you to kind of create bookings for people, and it'll hook into a Google Calendar so you can see all the sets and kind of automate the kind of process of bringing the sets in. So we found that smoothed the scheduling somewhat. So yeah, just a little tip for you.
Yeah, we had a couple little hiccups on scheduling, but that was very helpful to have people be able to just plug and play, get an automated email response, sign up for their set, and that was beautiful. Awesome. Well, guys, this has been fun. Any other closing thoughts on virtual worship, virtual burn?
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Just go do it.
Yeah.
I'm
Have a
literally
go.
in the middle of one right now.
Yes.
Oklahoma City. We're
Yeah.
going for 12 hours, and so there's a lot of different ways to do it, and a lot of different thoughts. I think the encouragement is don't be afraid of it. Dive in and use that heart that you're passionate about, seeing night and day worship, worship, prayer, missions, like these things. This is what we do. Like we adapt and we overcome and we dive in. And so my encouragement is just go for it. Just dive in and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? There's always the question about where do you find the balance between heart and excellence? And I think you want both. So when you're pursuing and starting out virtual worship, try and strike a balance between both. It's good to have heart, and that's ultimately what the Lord's looking for, is the right heart. But if we don't have the right equipment, if we don't have the right skill set, we're probably going to be not getting a whole lot of audience. Not that's what we're going for, but we're not probably going to engage as many people as we hope to. So there is an element of excellence. One of the other things I wanted to mention as well is in live streaming, and this is a challenge across the board for anybody. Vocals, especially in live streaming, is somewhat emphasized. So all the flaws in your singing, all the nuances in your voice that is usually covered up in a live worship setting at church, that is hidden, is all of a sudden amplified in live streaming. And so that's where a lot of the equipment comes in, and a lot of the gear that if you have the right gear, you can mitigate a lot of those things that people hear, or that you would hear you wouldn't want to hear.
Right on.
Yeah, I'd say as well, like, don't be afraid to go and worship with your family and do it live. Like, that's really powerful. Mainly because I think it really reflects God's heart. Like, that's what we see in heaven, family worshiping together. And like you said before, I think it's probably one of the things God's showing us. It's a new dimension of worship that we don't necessarily always get to see. And so that's been really beautiful.
Yeah, we saw that a couple of sets throughout the 168 hours where families were worshiping together in their living room. Matt, you did communion with your family, and it was beautiful. Just seeing families gather together and just worshiping and just being real.
Just being real. Yeah, for sure. I love it. Well, guys, thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
This was fun. Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in to the podcast, today's episode. Just one more time, I encourage you, please share this episode if you enjoyed it. And if you think it might be an encouragement or helpful to somebody, please do that. Make sure you subscribe, stay in touch with us. We got a lot more great stuff coming your way. And don't forget, God's presence changes everything. God bless.